Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael. I'm going to be your host for this afternoon's session where we're looking at aged reports in Sage 50 accounts. So I'll be doing the talking, the demos, and I'm assisted today by Tina and Abby, who will be on hand to answer any questions that you might have along the way. Now, a little bit of housekeeping just before we get started. So your microphone will be muted. You find you can't unmute yourself if you do have a microphone. And that means if you've got any questions for us, you just need to type them into the questions panel, which you should see in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. If you can't currently see that, just click the little icon on your toolbar. It will expand that and you should be able to start typing in the box at the bottom right-hand corner. You can download a copy of today's slides as well. That's available via the handouts icon. Two versions of those, one for really just downloading and saving to your PC. The other one, which some people have mentioned, is they like to print them. So there is a print-friendly format as well. So you can download either. If we take a quick look at what we're covering in this afternoon's session, so we're going to start with a little bit of background to credit control and the age balances. We'll look at the age balance options within the software as well, where you can access them and what they actually show. We'll look at how you can go about setting your aging periods. So do you want to, I suppose that will differ depending on what credit terms you have. We'll look at the age reports themselves, give you an idea of what's available. There's obviously quite a few reports available, and the number of reports that you have available will also differ depending on the number of, also the level of software that you have as well. And one of the probably the most important aspects of age reports is retrospective reporting. So how can you see what was outstanding at a particular point in time? So if you wanted to compare your age debtors, for instance, to maybe a trial balance or maybe a balance sheet as a year end or month end perhaps, then you'll want to know how to retrospectively report on that information. So nice and easy. It's just a case of remembering to tick the checkbox. So we'll pick up on that and try and explain what it does. We'll pick up on some of the common queries relating to age debtors as well. One of them being comparing the reports to the trial balance and balance sheet. So again, picking out key aspects that sometimes catch people out. And then just at the end of the session, just as normal, we'll explain a little bit about the additional support. And if there are any outstanding questions, we'll pick those up as well. But keep your questions coming. As I say, we've got Abby and Tina on hand, and they'll be answering any questions that you might have. Right, let's get stuck in then. So a little bit of background first of all. So if you do offer credit to your customers, obviously your main aim as part of credit control is to ensure that you get paid on time. And to help you with that, you need to understand who owes you money, how much is owed, and also how old that is being outstanding for as well. And if you just look at the customer's ledger, you've got two key bits of information. You've got a balance and a credit limit, but it doesn't give you a lot of information that. So if you're looking at the balance, it'll just be the current balance based on whatever transactions are entered. So one of the key points of that is that it isn't date sensitive, that balance field. So if you entered, you might have an older transaction, you might have maybe a transaction you've entered today. You may have even entered an invoice with a future date. That will be reflected in that balance. So that really, that's as far as credit control, I suppose that's the only two key bits of information that is available on the customer's ledger itself. What we're going to look at today are the age balance reports. So that's what we're going to try and take a look at, just to help you understand it in a bit more detail, get the breakdown of that balance figure. So the age balance reports, or the age balance options, just for viewing on the screen. We'll come on to the reports in a few minutes. Available in three key areas. Obviously within customers, you've got the age debt option, which will be on your toolbar at the top. You've got the activity, and the activity is available in two areas, either via the toolbar icon on the toolbar at the top of the customer's ledger, or by accessing the customer's record, and then you'll have an activity tab. And what we'll do in a moment as well, we'll also look at the chase debt view that you may or may not be aware of. And the chase debt view, by configuring it, you can actually see the aged information without actually having to do anything. So it's a good option. It's not an option that's available in Essentials, so I don't want to dwell too much on that chase debt option, but we will take a quick look at it for the rest of you who are maybe on the standard edition of Sage 50 or the professional. Right, let me share my screen and we'll get stuck into some demos. So we're going to start by going into customers. And first one we're going to look at is this age debt option on the top of the screen here. So we just click age debt, it takes us into that age debt window so we can see the account reference, the name. So we've got pretty much this similar information, but key sort of credit control information. So we can see the credit limit, we can see the balance, and it will break down that balance into the relevant periods to which it falls into. You've got your totals along the bottom as well. If you want to drill down into one in a bit more detail, just highlight it. You've got the detailed view at the top, and it will take you in and show you the transaction information then as well. So if we just pick on this one as well, I think I've got, no, I don't want on that one. I thought I might have a bit more of a breakdown against that one. So as I say, it will give you the transaction information. This will give you totals, but it doesn't give you individual transaction numbers. Or as I say, if you drill down, you're going to get things like the transaction number, the type. You've also got the reference on there, the date of the transaction, due date, etc. If you highlight a customer before going into that age debt as well, it will only pull through the ones that you've selected. So if you want everything, just make sure you've got nothing selected. Good habit to get into, just click clear on your toolbar. That will, if you've got anything selected, it will just remove any highlights. And then if you go into the age debt option, it will pull them all through for you. As you mentioned, the other way to get at that information is just go directly into the activity. It will list the customer's transactions and you will get the aged breakdown at the bottom. The other way to get at that activity is going into the record itself and then just accessing the activity within it as well. So again, you can see the customer's age balances at the bottom here. Now, the other one I did mention was the Chase Debt View. Now, if you've not come across Chase Debt View before, it's something that's available in the standard and professional level of the software. You'll find that you've got the two options in the top right-hand corner within customers, standard and Chase Debt. Chase Debt will take you to this view. Now, if I just quickly reset that, I'll just go back to use defaults, just to reset the view. And then I'll show you how I got it into this position as well. So that's a reset. So this is the default view when you first go in. So as well as the balance, obviously by default, you don't see the credit limit this time. So you've got similar information, but you don't see the credit limit, but you do have this time. From that balance, you can see, if anything, what's actually overdue. So this is a good example. This one, we've got £120 as the balance on the account, but there's nothing overdue yet. Now, if you use the age debtors a lot, what you can do is display additional columns. And this goes for just about any ledger that you're working in. If you right-click on any of your column headings, it will give you a list, and you can then start choosing what option or what columns you do and don't want displayed. So disputed, for instance, if I knock that one out, it disappears from the list. If I wanted rid of, let's say, the payment method, if I right-click on the column heading, find it, I can switch it off, it disappears. So again, I can start decluttering and getting rid of the information I don't need. Now for the age reports, what you do have, if you right-click, you've got the age periods listed. So you've got age current, age 30, 60, 90, and all that. So we can start switching those columns on. So I'll just, again, right-click, choose which one you want to show or hide. We're just going to enable all of them. And that's them done. So I now don't even need to run a report. I can come into this screen and I just see that aged information displayed by default. The other one to mention as well, just while we're on here, just a quick tip, is the overdue column. What you can do is if you want to say, right, I want to see what's essentially going to be due or overdue within the next X number of days, you can just set it at the top here. So you can apply different filters. So I'll just say all, and I can say, right, I want to display what's due in maybe the next 7 days, and that will impact on the overdue column. Right, okay. Any questions on just what we've covered so far? If not, we'll go back to the slides and we'll move on. We're going to start looking, first of all, at the aging periods before we look at the age reports themselves, because this is something that you may want to change. Now, by default, or you will have two options, but it's the period aging option that will be selected by default. So where the periods that are displayed is going to be based on a current period, and then you'll have period 1, which is essentially 30 to 59 days, period 2, 60 to 89, period 3, 90 to 119, and then period 4, which is 120 days or older, and that's what period it would fall into. Now, you will need to, obviously, you can decide, you can change the periods themselves if you want to. So if you're based on, I don't know, let's say 14 days credit, for instance, you might want to change period 1 accordingly. So as soon as it hits that 14 days of being outstanding, it would fall into the period 1 aging. And you may adjust accordingly as well. So you may go 14, 21, 28, just as an example. You can sort of see very quickly how it moves through that aging process. The thing to watch out for period aging as well, if you are basing it on 30, 60, 90, is when you've got months with different number of days. So you may find, if you've got a transaction dated on the first of the month, for instance, and you're running the report, an age report at the end of the month, if it's a month that's got 31 days, then the outstanding balance on the first of that month would fall into period 1. And sometimes that can just make it a bit more tricky to understand the balances in that way. And that's why many, many years ago, calendar monthly aging was introduced. So it works off a pure calendar month, that one. So if I was to run that today, for instance, the current period on my report would be December. Period 1 would then be November, period 2 October, period 3 September, etc. A little bit easier to understand when you're actually looking at the age report. So let's just quickly have a look at that in the software. So back to Sage 50. I'm going to pop into settings at the top, and then into customer defaults, and you'll have an aging tab at the top. Now, if you've got aging/due date, it means that you've got version 28.1 installed. If you don't have 28.1 installed, it'll just be called aging. So essentially these are the two toggle options at the top. It's period aging, that's selected by default. So if you did want to change it, click into the box, just a case of changing the first column to whatever you want it to be. Let's just set that back. Or if you prefer, as I say, a little bit easier to understand when you are looking at the age reports, the calendar monthly aging. I'll just OK that. That's where you would change it if you needed to. If you do change to calendar monthly and you then have a look at the age debt, obviously it's going to change the headings as well. So rather than being 30, 60, 90, you've now got 1 month, 2 month, 3 month, and then older. You can toggle between them at any point. What you can't do is you can't say for these customers, I want to set aging periods. You can set their credit limits and everything, but for reporting purposes, you can't specifically say, I want to run this report and I want it to be set to this. And for these customers, I want it to be set to that. So it's one set of aging periods when you run the reports. Yes, you can change them in between running the reports if you want to, but there is only the one set. And that would impact on your data as a whole. So if you change the aging periods, anyone else looking at the data, that's going to impact on what they're looking at as well. We always get asked about that one, which is why I thought I'd better mention it. Right, next we're going to take a quick look at the age reports themselves. So I'm not going to go through many of them. The age reports are something that's they've built up quite a bit over the years. So there are different levels of information. There'll be different sorts applied to them as well. On some of them, they may show disputed items, some won't show it, some will display in descending order, ascending order. So it's a case of you finding what you're after. You could amend the reports as well. Also, there's a report design service as well. So if you find you can't get exactly what you're after, do get in touch with our support team. They can take you down that route. But largely speaking, there are four types of these reports. There's contacts, summary, detailed, and drillable. And one tip I would mention, because there are that many of them when you start using them, any that you do need to access, flag them as a favorite. You'll find them much quicker going forward. Let's have a quick look at what we're talking about. So back to my screen. We're still in customers. I'm back to the standard view at this point. And if we go into reports, choose the age debtors folder. Let's just maximize that as well. So into age debtors, and as you can see, there's loads of them. And this, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, this will differ. So some of you, if you're on the essentials level, for instance, you might not have all the reports that I've got. For instance, you won't have the ones with disputed items, for instance. Disputed items isn't an option within essentials. So find the ones you're after. If we just quickly run a contacts report, just so you can see what one looks like. I'm just going to accept all the default criteria for the time being. We'll come back to the little tick boxes, etc. Let's just maximize that one and zoom in a little bit. So this is the contacts report. You've got the basic contact information for each customer that's included on the reports. And then you've got the balances, just the overall balances. You don't see transaction information at this point. You would just see totals that fall within each of the periods. So that's sort of contact style reports. Let's go for summary next. Again, just accepting all the default criteria. A bit more compact, this one. A bit like when we went into the aged icon on the top of the customer screen. It's going to give you basic information. So we've got the account reference, the name of the account, and then it's essentially a lot more compact. So it's one line per account that's included. Detailed is probably a more useful one if you're going to start chasing your customers. So it'll give you individual transaction information at this point. So this one's going to per customer, where they're included. It's not only going to include things like the balances and what period it relates to, but it also includes things like the transaction number, the type, the date, the reference number, so invoice number in this instance, as well as the basic contact details as well. So I suppose that's a better one if you work in credit control and maybe you work from printouts and you're using it to chase a customer. Excuse me. Then finally, the other one to mention is the drillable reports. So let's just quickly run that one. And from this report, a bit like the aged one we looked at earlier, you can see they're in blue, so meaning they're drillable. If I click on that, it will give me that sort of down to transaction level at that point. So again, it just depends what level of information that you need. If you find one that you're specifically after or that you're going to use all the time, remember to flag it as a favorite. You just click on the star. So let's do 2 of them. And all that means is it adds them to the favorites folder. And where that's used is when you come into reports, or you see go to print an invoice layout, for instance, it will be available in that type of area as well. Because it defaults to the favorites folder, it will list the ones that you've got there to save you going into age debtors and thinking, oh yeah, which is the one I run. Just means it that little bit easier to get to. So Yasmin, your question there, what does the first column know the column heading, stand for in the age debtors detailed report. Let's show you that one again. So this column here, let's zoom in a bit so you can see that. This is the transaction number, so the equivalent of your audit trail number. So it's the reference, it refers to the invoice number or whatever reference you've entered when you've entered it. But that's the audit trail number. So number 3, as an example, just close out of that one, close out of reporting, pop into transactions. If I look for transaction number 3, it would give me the detail of the transaction itself. As you can see, I haven't got much data entered in this company. But again, don't sit there wondering about something. If you're not sure about something, pop the questions in there, and as I say, we'll try and pick them up as best we can. Right, let's go back to the slides. And probably the key thing relating to age reports is retrospective reporting. But it's easily achieved just by this little checkbox, this exclude later payments. What it means is, because it's retrospective, you can see what was outstanding at a particular point in time. So if I'm trying to run this report, and let's say I've run a trial balance or a balance sheet, and I've got a total debtors figure, for instance, and I'm trying to work out, right, well, I've got that total debtors figure, but I need a list of what was outstanding at that point in time. And it's just simply a case of setting your date back and ticking the box to exclude later payments. Now, what that exclude later payments option will do, and I should have an example on the next slide, is a very simple example as well. So let's say we got a sales invoice dated in May, and we got a receipt dated in June. Now that receipt simply pays off that invoice. So if we were to run an age debtors report as at the end of May, it's only going to give me a list of transactions that are still outstanding. Now that invoice, although it's dated in May, would be flagged as having been paid, so it wouldn't actually pick it up. But if you wanted a list of what was outstanding as at the end of May, so you want it to exclude the effect of the sales receipt, you need to tick that checkbox, the exclude later payments checkbox. And that would then mean it would show a balance of £100 as at the end of May, because it's excluding the effect of any later transactions. So it can make a big difference when you're comparing reports, particularly when you're comparing and you want that breakdown of debtors at year end. It's similar when you run creditors reports as well. You have the same little tick box. It's probably the big thing that catches people out. It'd be much easier, I'm not sure why, but it would be much easier if the little checkbox was selected by default. It would probably create less queries to our support line if it was just switched on. But it's not, you just need to tick that box. Let's just have a quick look at that one. Let's go back to my screen. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into this A1 Design Services account. And if we have a look at the activity for this one, we've got that exact example that we were just looking at on the slide a moment ago. So we got the invoice dated in May, the receipt in June. So let's run a report and we'll see if it gets picked up. So A1 Design Services, we'll go into reports. We'll just do the contacts report. And I'm going to set this back to the end of May. So we'll do the 31st. And I'll not tick the checkbox at this point. So I'll just OK that one. And you'll see on this one, the A1 Design Services account isn't included. It includes the other account that had an outstanding balance, and probably still has an outstanding balance, but it doesn't include that A1 Design Services. If we run the report again though, and this time we'll set the date back again, and we'll tick the checkbox, exclude later payments. OK that. This time it has picked up that account. So we got the A1 Design Services and we got this Bob's Building Supplies now getting pulled through as well. So it must be in a similar position, that one. So that is probably the key to running that report. Set your date and make sure you tick the box. Now I'm going to pop back to the slides again. And I want to pick up on some of the common queries. Now, probably another common one is, why do customers with zero balances appear on the report? And this is where you may need to do a little bit of tidying up within your various accounts. The reason for having zero balances on the account is that they must have outstanding transactions. It wouldn't include them by default. Now, it might just show zeros across the board when you're looking at the age reports. And what that would mean is you might have an outstanding invoice and a receipt or credit note in the same period, but they're not matched together. So it's quite common if you deal with, if you take customer deposits, for instance, but you then invoice the customer in the same period. You've got an outstanding payment on account and an outstanding invoice in the same period. So the net effect is it's going to show a zero balance in that period, but it includes it on the report because there are outstanding transactions. So this is where you may need to just tidy things up, just to allocate the transactions together. You may find an account has a zero balance, but it has a positive balance in one period and an equivalent negative balance in another period. Similar position, you just need to allocate the transactions together. So again, just tidying up everything on the report. Now, the other big one, and this is very common round when people get round to running their month end or year end reports, is why are your total debtors different to another figure, such as your debtors control account in your nominal ledger, or your trial balance, or your balance sheet. So you've got to understand in that situation what you're comparing against each other. Now, when you're looking at the nominal codes in your debtors control accounts, if you're just looking at that balance in your nominal codes list, so when I'm talking about that, I mean, if I just go back to my screen, to nominal codes, and when I'm looking at the debtors control, I'm just referring to this balance here, this 420. Now, this is not a date sensitive figure, this one. This is what the balance is on the account right now. So if you're running an aged report, or you're running it, maybe have you got future data transactions? Future data transactions will be picked up in this balance, but may not be being picked up in the aged report if you're just running it up to a specific date. The other one to watch out for as well is if you've posted journals. It's quite common, that one, where people have posted journals for maybe writing off bad debt, or maybe there's been a problem with you've never fully entered the opening balances. You've posted journals to your debtors control, and therefore when you post a journal to that, it doesn't reflect against a specific customer. So again, that could be another reason. So if you're finding the odd different, check your data, make sure you've got no warnings against that. If you're comparing your aged debtors to the likes of your trial balance, again, make sure you're comparing like with like. So yes, you'd probably be running up to the same date, but the big thing that would catch you out on that one is when you're going into customers, make sure you've got all of your customers listed. So have you got a filter applied? Or are you ticking that box to exclude later transactions? So for instance, I may have an account that it may have had a balance at the time. So when we're looking at this A1 Design Services, it's got a zero balance. I might well have hidden that account. I might have hidden zero balances from my list. So therefore, if the account isn't listed in the first instance on this list, when I go to reports, it means it's not going to include it in the the detail of the report when it calculates. So get a number of things to calculate, and obviously balance sheet, similar position, but you've also got the chart of accounts coming into the equation as well. So when you're comparing your aged total debtors to your debtors control account on your balance sheet, other nominal codes being included in that debtors figure on your balance sheet because of the chart of accounts. So you just need to understand what you're comparing against each other. But initially, the key things, make sure you've got, it says all records at the top of this list. Make sure you're running the report up to the right point. Even basics such as your balance sheet, let's say you were running that up to the end of October. When you're running your aged debtors, make sure you specify the right date. So you're specifying, say, the 31st of October and not the 30th. So again, make sure you're comparing like with like. All of those common queries, though, you will find support for that within our help center because they are so common, those. Just little things, sometimes that may just catch people out. Now, Help Center wise, as I mentioned, there is loads of information in there. If you're not familiar with our Help Center, you will have an option for that on your navigation bar when you're working in Sage. So the navigation bar on the left, just top left-hand corner, you'll have a Help Center link. Knowledge base contains loads of support guides, articles, there's webinars that you can register for in there, there's videos that you can watch. And also there's options beyond that for getting in touch with our support team, and it will try and sort of guide you down the correct path for getting in touch with our support team as well. So if you're not sure about something, do get in touch. Now it does bring us to the end of the demos, so if there's any questions, we will start picking them up in just a moment. Just to mention some of the upcoming webinars we've got planned in as well. If you have missed any of the credit control sessions, we will be rerunning them. So sessions 2 and 3 over the next 2 weeks. So please get yourself signed up for some of them as well. We've got report design sessions on the go, very common one that people have asked for, understanding more about tax codes, specifically on the Brexit tax codes. So come along and Jackie will explain those in a bit more detail. We've also got a session on year end as well. If you're interested in signing up for any of those sessions, watch out for your follow-up email. You get that in around about an hour's time. And it should include the links that you need so you can get yourself registered, or so you can watch recordings as well. Looks like there was some sort of problem with one of the handouts today, so we'll try and get that resolved. We'll make it available. If you watch out for the link on your follow-up email, it'll take you across to Sage City, so it will enable you to download the handouts later on as well. Yasmin, you mentioned a request. If you can put that onto the survey, because we do review those. So Yasmin's just requesting similar session on the supplier side. What you've learned today about the customer side, though, the same sort of guidance, the same tips, and obviously the same common questions as well, they will apply to the purchaser side. Just in case anyone's leaving, I'll quickly thank you for your time. So appreciate you coming along. I hope you've enjoyed it and you found it useful. Again, please get yourself signed up for the other sessions. If anyone needs a bit of a recap on anything we've covered, watch out for your follow-up email as well. Get that in around about an hour, by which time the recording of today's session should be available. Otherwise, take care, stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you on some future sessions as well. But we are going to hang around for any questions, so I'll just give it another minute or two just to see if any questions do come through. I think we've picked them all up so far. Well, so we'll just give it a minute just to see if any additional questions do get submitted. If anyone needs to leave, you can just click the cross in the top right-hand corner, or you can click exit at the bottom on your toolbar. If anyone is interested, we will be covering fixed assets tomorrow. I think it's tomorrow morning, that one. So if you are interested, again, watch out for your follow-up email. We'll be looking at the fixed assets register. Okay, don't seem to be any additional questions, so we'll end the webinar at that point. So again, many thanks.